Hey guys, this is the second in a two-part series featuring Karema and Soul Sofa. I'm attaching the link so that if you haven't watched the very first one, go ahead and check it out first and then come back and watch this one. It'll make a little bit better sense. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, all that wonderful stuff. And see you the next time we post.
That was February of 2015. A month and a day after he was laid off. So we have no health insurance.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my.
And we have no income. So we began that. He was receiving unemployment. And then as the chemo treatments progressed, he received disability. Back and forth to Hershey. An hour away. I'm still homeschooling the children. But you know, there's something to be said about a made-up mind. And once you make up your mind that this is what we're going to do, this is what we have to do, therefore this is what we're going to do, then you just set forth and you do it. You do whatever's necessary. So, you know, the chemo treatments went as well as chemo can go. His cancer was very aggressive. From the moment of the first diagnosis until the first chemo, that tumor began to spread up his neck was about almost 3 sizes big. His face was swollen. And the doctor said we need to start immediately because they knew how aggressive it was. And they really knew that they were just buying us time. They knew that 17% chance of him making it. So we began chemo. April, May, June, all of that was fine. I began to give myself a little glimmer of hope around my birthday in August because the doctor said the goal is we're going to do chemo for about 9 months or so, get you into remission, and then we're going to do a stem cell transplant. His sister was a perfect match. And so we were getting close. And in the past, I did not allow myself to raise my hopes. Because once those hopes were dashed, in the past, it was so hard for me to gather myself back up again after the hope that you had was demolished. So around my birthday in August, I said, okay, girl, okay, all right, we're almost there. Okay, we did it, we're almost there. September, my son's birthday, we went to Hershey Park. And I'm so grateful for that day because that was the last big, huge family excursion, family trip that we had. After that, he had a relapse, which led to radiation, which led to strokes. Now, we did not know that he had had the stroke. He just became non-responsive. And so we're in the hospital, and they're trying to wake him in there, and he's not responding. So he was like in a coma almost. And so the doctor said, it was so funny. Because at this point, you hit a point where you're just like, okay, you find humor in the little things. So it was late at night, and there was some first-year resident on, and he literally had a book, like a glossary index book. And I said, are you looking in your book to tell you what to do next? And he said, yeah, I said, oh, okay.
Yeah. What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? So he said, well, ma'am, you might want to call your children because we don't know. Called the children up. That was the first time I had to tell them that their daddy was gonna die. And you can imagine, there's no book. I was like, do you have that in your book? Is there a chapter on that? Any words for how do I do that part? While you're looking in your book.
That's when they talk to you about the caterpillar turning into the butterfly.
Yeah, right. You want to read that chapter? So the kids came in and, their dad is laying there again, not able to speak or talk. And so they said their goodbyes. My mom took them back home. And I'm left there in the hospital. And he's hooked up to all these machines, and I see his heart rate, and I see his, his respiratory and all that. And I'm sitting there, and once again, God says, come talk to me. What are you afraid of? And I'm like, what am I afraid of? What do you mean, what am I afraid of? My husband is laying here about to die. To which the Lord said, He said, do you not understand that either he's going to die tonight or he's going to die next week, in 3 months, 3 years, 30 years? What are you afraid of? Because that's going to happen. So what are you afraid of? Well, God, how are we going to make it? Who's going to provide for them? I'm here for that, God said. I'm your source. Well, Lord, how am I going to comfort my children? I have comfort for that. I'm your source. Well, God, what am I going to do? I've been home with these children all these years. I have not worked. Oh, I have guidance for that. I'm your source. And he said, keep going. So I went through the list of that, and at the end of every question, he said, yep, I got that right here. I'm your source. He said, now, that was cute. Now let's go deal with the real stuff. Let's while we're here talking about it, you might as well just put it all on the table. So let's talk about it all. What is it that you just can't imagine recovering from? And I saw my children. And the Lord said, sitting in this very hospital right now, there's a mama sitting around there instead of her husband in the bed. That's her child. Go on and envision that. Because guess what? What I'm trying to teach you is, when you reach what you think to be the worst, I'm still there. And all of these other things are a resource. I am your source. And as long as you understand how to tap into me, then you will always be able to overcome anything. Nothing can destroy you. Nothing. So by the end of that night, I said, okay. I grabbed a bag of chips, opened up the chips, sat there, ate the chips, looked at the monitors. I said, oh, you're not taking them tonight? Okay. Next day, boyfriend woke up. We had Thanksgiving in the hospital. But after that night, I was a completely different person. That was in November. Few weeks later, I said, God, show me, how much time does he have left? And God said, not much. He said, but you know what to do, right? I said, yep.
Was he in the hospital the whole time?
Well, nope, he came home after that. Came home. And it was in February, he had fallen, because after the strokes, his balance was off, and the cancer now had really begun to affect his cognitive abilities. And I knew that I could no longer care for him at home. And I was putting a strain on my children and me. Because you reach a point as a caretaker, I wanted to go back to being his wife. I didn't want to be his caretaker anymore. Because as a caretaker, I had to do things and say things that as a wife I didn't want to have to do. I just wanted to love him, not to have to care for him. Mm-hmm. You know? Because as the caretaker, I had to say hard things. You know, no, you're going to use this walker. Right. No, you're going to let me do whatever. And my children, you know, having to, when he fell, my son, the oldest one, had to pick him up off the floor, put his daddy on his back. You know, the children had to, thank God I had all 6. I was like, all right, I'm going to need 4 of y'all. Okay, each person take a leg, I'm going to take an arm, you know, and he was on his stomach getting up the steps. Mm. These are the things that no one tells you. They're not in the book, you know, when the chemo wears you down so bad. But you stay downstairs too long, right? You use up all your strength, now you can't get upstairs to your bed. So he would be on his belly, and we had to take a kid, okay, lift daddy's leg up, put it up. Okay, you got that leg, okay, hold it now, I got this leg. Mm. Okay, up in the front, all right, got this arm, drag him up. That's what we had to do. For my oldest son to put his daddy on his back and to carry him down the steps, shoulder him down the steps, drag him out the house, back him up into the van, and lift his sick father up. And I didn't want my children to have to do that anymore. Mm-hmm. And we wouldn't have to. The last time he fell, that was his last time at home. So, took him to the hospital, and they said, Mrs. Green, there's nothing more we can do. And I knew, you know, the last chemo treatment, the doctor said, this is a Hail Mary pass. If this doesn't work, then we're out of options. So I had made peace with that. And so when we were in the hospital, they said, call your family, because at this point we're looking at days, maybe a week. Called the children in. That was the hardest part. having to tell the children. And again, we're the words. And so I said to them, I said, guys, God has decided that he wants to heal Daddy in heaven. Daddy's not going to be healed here. So in order to heal Daddy in heaven, he has to take him. And to see their faces. And so looking back now, you wonder, did I do enough? Did I give them enough time with him? Did we take enough pictures? And there's no real right answer, for that. And so, you sit there and they said their goodbyes and they went home. But it's a strange thing how everyone comes to grief differently. And the secret is to give everyone their space to grieve and to process that. The nurse told us the signs to look for. You're going to hear his breathing change. And I told them, I said, I do not want him to suffer. I don't want him to experience any pain whatsoever. There are just a few things that I would like to erase from my memory of that time. I want to keep the hard parts. I want to keep the suffering, my suffering. I want to keep the things that we learned as a family. The things that I would ask God to erase from my memory. When I saw my husband as strong as he was, when I saw the cancer take his mind to being a 3-year-old boy again, when I saw his fear, when I saw the look on his face when he was not understanding what was happening, he was experiencing pain in his body. But he didn't understand what it was because the cancer had removed and stolen that part of his mind that would allow him to recognize where he was. It's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because as my son was putting him in the car, he looked around and saw the children crying. And I'm so grateful that he didn't understand. The only thing he was able to understand, he said, something's not right. He said, why are they crying? He said, something's really, really wrong, isn't it? But he didn't understand to the degree, because if he had, that would have broken his heart. That's the blessing. The curse is for a wife to see her husband in that place of suffering. So when we were in hospice, in the hospital, I told the nurses, I said, I don't care what you have to do. I don't ever want to see that look on his face again. I don't ever want him to feel that pain again. It's not necessary at this point. So his sister was there, and his cousin, and me. And I was resting in the bed. We took shifts, and it was my turn to lay down. And sure enough, I heard that sound that the nurse said to listen for. And I immediately sat up. And I called for the nurse, and she came. And she said, yep, we're beginning the process. She said it could be as long, it's just like birthing your baby, right? Mm-hmm. It could be, it depends on the person. I knew that I wanted to touch him as he transitioned. Because in the past, I was scared of dead things. People, animals, didn't matter. And I knew that it would be hard for me if I were not touching him. It would be hard for me to come then after he had transitioned and touch him. At least I thought that it would. So I had to touch him. I had to be very close to him. And it was so funny, throughout the years of our marriage, I remember laying my head on his chest. And I remember listening to his heartbeat. And I remember thinking, you know, there's going to come a day where I'm not going to hear that. And that morning that he left, I wanted to lay my head on his chest again. Because I wanted to hear him leave. And it was so peaceful. It was so peaceful. And I just remember at that moment, the totality of it all coming back. My husband, while he always knew the Lord, had chosen not to always walk extremely closely with him for fear that God would call him to do something that he did not want to do. I'll never forget, early in our marriage, he said to me, he said, yeah, I know the Lord has called me to preach. And I said, you're not doing that. And he said, no, I don't want to do that. Oh. So I'll close out this chapter of my story by saying this little part. Flashback about a good, maybe 12 years prior to his passing. I prayed one of those dangerous prayers. I said, God, I want you to do whatever is necessary to get his attention. Not for my sake, but for his. And it was almost as if God showed me a flash of what was going to happen. And I quickly said, God, spare his life if you can. But get his attention. Make him into the man that you've always wanted him to be. Once the diagnosis came, he woke me up one night and he said, I want you to know I'm good with God. I want you to know Jesus and I are okay. God had to use cancer, he told me. He said, I wasn't coming to him any other way. It had to be like this. And he preached. On YouTube, he sat there with his laptop and his Bible, and he preached. So the morning that he transitioned, I worshiped God over his body. Because I knew that at that moment, he was in the arms of his Father. It has been the most amazing journey. I would say to anyone who is currently in that journey, who has a sick spouse, I would say, remember, you are the healthy spouse. You are the healthy adult, which is what I had to tell my husband. The roles have to change. You have to do your job, which you always did, and you have to do their job. And that's a level of understanding. My husband and I had to have that harsh conversation because, again, back to that twisted martyrdom thinking, right? He was used to having it his way. But now, buddy, you're sick. You're sick, number one. And number two, now I'm healthy emotionally. So let's just get this straight. I'm the healthy adult. You're the sick adult. I'm going to make the decisions right now. And you have to just go along with it and trust me. I would say to anyone going through this experience, you must take breaks. You must tap out for a little bit. Panera Bread became my best friend. The car in the parking lot became my best friend. Release the valve every now and again and let it out. You have to grieve along the process. You cannot wait till the end to grieve. You grieve the fact that the illness is here. You grieve losing, because you're losing your spouse a little bit as you go. You're losing your loved one. So you grieve along the way. Let it off, unscrew it, let that steam off, screw it back, focus and do what you have to do. The doctors would tell me all the time, Miss Green, it's really okay. You can go sit. No, I do not have the liberty to lose my mind right now. I have 6 people who are looking at me for an answer. And I have to advocate for him.
Right.
Be their advocate. Me, Miss People Pleaser, wanting everyone to like me and love me all the time. First lesson that I learned that I was being healed, the nurses in the hospital, they did not know. They had just come out of a room and I was walking down the hallway. They did not know I was behind them. And they were discussing us. And they said, oh, Mr. Green, we have to make sure that we stay on top of his case because his wife, she's a piece of work. Now, the old me was like, oh, I'm not a piece of work. Not me. The new me said, oh, yes, girl, yes, you are. And you better be a piece of work because your husband can't speak for himself.
Right.
So you better advocate for him.
Right.
Enjoy the time that you have. You realize that little things are just little things and they don't mean anything anymore. I would say to friends, supporting others going through this. My friends that I have, especially the ones that are up here in Southern York County, the church, the homeschool community, they demonstrated the best example, period. I had people picking up my children for me. They organized this whole thing apart from me and they said, okay, just tell us your children's schedules, because at that time, this is before I had 2 drivers. Tell us what time they need to get out of practice and we'll do it. I had meals at home. His friends, my husband's friends, his fraternity brothers, when are his hospital visits? Nope. His friends would pick him up and say, we got it today. Just so I can be home with the children. That type of a support. When the car would break down, I had a friend, picked up the car, had it towed to the shop, had it repaired and brought it back. I had no idea. That's how you support someone going through that. And now this last part, afterwards, I did not realize, well no, maybe I did. Even though I grieved along the way, and I was very open and present in sharing our story with everyone as we went, but after he died, I needed time now to distance myself from everybody because now I needed to grieve. I needed to figure it out. Not only grieve, but I needed to figure out who am I now? How do I walk now, as a widow? How do I do this now? And I needed to figure it out by myself. So I literally sent a memo. I sent out an email to some of my closest girlfriends saying, listen, I need a minute. I might need a couple weeks. If you text me, I might text back and say, I'm okay. And that's it. You'll hear from me because I had to figure it out. The interesting thing is, some people gave me that space. Some people didn't. Some people felt, I don't know if they felt like because they walked me through all of this, that now they felt like they needed to walk me through this part too. I've also experienced that in grief, some people feel like you're not grieving unless they see you grieve. So they want to rub your back and they want to see, they're looking for evidence. And if they don't get that evidence, then they just want to keep coaxing you into demonstrating your grief. I had to distance myself from all of that. So it was a very interesting and awkward time because even though I felt like I needed to pull away so that I can grieve privately and so that I can learn how to walk, I felt like in that time I lost friends. But at the same time, there were some people, not many, that I had to say goodbye to. Because who God was calling me to be on the other side. That they were used to me being a certain way. Used to me being the, sweet little, kind little. And if you're not going to allow me to walk into this new space, sorry, you cannot come with me. Or you can only go but so far. A text message, a message on Facebook, hi, I'm great, how are you? All is well, praise God, and that's it. I didn't know that part was going to happen. So that's another grief right there, right? Because I'm grieving friendships lost. I'm grieving, there's a part of me that even had to grieve who I had to who I had to change into in order to reach and attain all that God has said that I am to reach and attain. So give your friends space and time, because they have to change. And they're still the same person. Because my daughter said this. She said, Mom, you're different. And I said to her, I'm not really different. There are many layers, right? I'm multifaceted. During this time that you've known me, you've just seen just one part take dominance. But now that this whole arena is gone, there's a whole nother part that's already in there. The spark that my husband was first attracted to. Now she has to come out now. And you're not used to seeing that. And as a married woman, especially being a Christian married woman, we're taught the husband takes the lead, and we're submitted to him, so we're kind of back here, So if there's anything that goes on in the world, dealing with insurance companies or whatever else, he's the main voice, and I'm there as a support. Well, now that main voice is gone. I cannot be let me say, no. And that dominant voice that was always there, that submitted in the marriage relationship, now he's gone. My dominant voice has to take prominence now. And that was off-putting to some people. And I had to say, may the Lord watch between me and thee while we're apart one from another. So I've learned many lessons. I've learned that grief is an amazing thing. The human heart is an amazing thing. The ability to love, the ability to grieve, the ability to experience exhilarating joy, and the ability to experience the deepest, darkest, loneliest of places, a place where you never thought that you would ever go. I know what it's like to sit on the floor and have the blanket over your head and just to hold yourself and to rock back and forth until you are well. I know what it's like to live on the edge of sanity, where if one thought goes the wrong way, there go you. I know what it's like to talk yourself up out of that hole. I know what that's like. And I know what it's like to sit on the sofa and to experience and to envision your greatest fears and to reach the end of that rope and to look death in the face and to say, you can't destroy me. I know what it's like now to understand your power and to walk in it fully and to let it out. I know what it's like now to experience a marriage looking back and to see the little stupid stuff that you used to argue about and realize, God, that was so dumb. I know what it's like to drive through areas of the city where you experience life together and to relive those memories as if it just happened. I know what it's like to have birthdays for your children and to know that the person that made you a mama is not here with you to blow out those candles. I know what it's like to look at yourself in the mirror and to see the effects of motherhood on your body. And now as a single woman to wonder, will I ever experience love again? And will another man be able to appreciate what my husband appreciated? Because he has his children living here. And he can look at the wrinkles on my belly. And he can still kiss them and love them because you did that because these are my babies. I know what it's like to look at yourself and to say, am I worthy again of somebody's love? How do you even do that? The human heart is an amazing thing. To hold all those tensions at the same place. So,
You're pretty awesome. I didn't know you then, so this is my first.
Life is pretty awesome.
That it is.
God is awesome.
That he is.
And it doesn't matter what happens, truly. Only I have the say in what destroys me. And I have said that nothing shall. And so since now I know how to connect with my source, and since how I know how to leverage that power,
Look out, world.
What are the doors?
I understand that verse in Proverbs 31 where it says, she laughs at the future without fear of it. No fear at all. So just moving forward, I am so very excited about the future. I'm excited about life. The only thing that I strive for now is to let his power out. My favorite verse, and I'll close with this, my favorite verse is, now unto him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that you can ask, hope, or imagine, according to his power that is at work in you. He told me the other day, he said, I want you to look back over your life. He said, look at every time that you've experienced something that exceeded your expectations, went above what you thought or hoped for. What did my power have to do with that? I said, oh, well, in all of those moments, I simply operated in the fullness of your power. He said, and that is the secret. That's how you experience more than you can ever imagine. Let me fill you to overflowing, and then let that out all the time. Without fear, love or serve and give from your saucer, so that you can love and serve and give and live abundantly. When you transition into the next life, it's just a transition. Again, energy is never created nor destroyed, right? So you're not going to be destroyed, ever. So what do you really have to fear?
Hi.
Hey, y'all. Hey.
I want to start with a prayer.
Oh, sure.
A good way to start the day.
Oh, thanks.
Well, thanks. Thank you, Jesus, for this sweet moment. Thank you for Karema and her heart and her journey, her chapters. Thank you that she's spreading this light to push out the darkness in other people's situations. Thank you that where two are gathered, there you are. And I just know that you're here and you're going to guide our time, you're going to guide